What's up, everybody? My name is Bam, and I'm going to be showing you how to make this sound right here. All right, everybody, let's get straight into it. We're going to open up Serum and look at what our preset looks like. So here it is. We got some obvious FM from B going on, but I'm going to turn everything off, and we're going to start from the beginning just so you can get a grasp of what it sounded like to start with and what we did along the way. All right, so we started with a basic shapes. That's right in here. And we're going to put that on a triangle wave. And we're going to do the same thing on oscillator B, and these are going to be FMing from each other. And so I'll turn the unison down and I'll bypass this. Here's what it sounds like. Here's just an obvious triangle. Nice and deep. Great sound. And that's why we like to use basic shapes, just because they automatically have great sound. You don't have to go searching through a bunch of wavetables to find the greatest growl. You can just make it on your own. So I wanted to bring up the unison, and you can hear just a little bit. I brought the detune all the way down because I don't want that super wide detune sound, but it's just a little different from when you add the unison, even though you're not detuning at all. Now we're doing our FM from B. This is where we want it at, about 28% with 53 on LFO2. And this is going to be our LFO for FMing from B. We're going to have it at 1/2, and that's what that's going to look like. And that just gives us our shape right there. Next, we are going to put on some noise, and our noise is going to be affected by LFO1, which also is going to affect our level. So for this, just start with your level right here, put it all the way maxed out. And I forgot to mention, because we're FMing from B, we want our level at 0 because we don't want this volume going in. If we did, it would sound completely different. We just want it to be affecting our oscillator A. So anyways, next we're going to be turning on our noise. You just keep it on the same AC hum, but you're going to use an LFO that looks like this at 1/2 to modulate that. And that's what that's going to sound like. This is what you want to have your LFO look like, and that's because you want to be able to make the sound change over time. And as you can kind of tell, the level of your oscillator A right here is not the same. Dun, 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 dun. It's a little bit longer, louder for longer here, and then it starts a little sooner here, and then drops off a little bit faster here. Not by a whole lot, but enough to make it interesting to the ear for someone who's not really listening for it. Next, we're going to go to our filter. We're going to put on a high peak 12. That's right in here. Boom. And this guy we're going to have modulate so that these peaks, which you can see if I turn the resonance all the way up, so these peaks talk to each other. This one's about, where does it go? 1716 hertz, right, almost like straight up and down. And our LFO is going to be -18. And our frequency here is going to be 43% with 15. And that's just the spots I chose based on how I thought it sounded the best. You can move them a little bit. The main thing is I like them to kind of be going together or going apart. And that's the way you do that is basically you have one going, the LFO going this way, one LFO going this way, or going together. And that'll give it a little bit of that talking flair. Bring the resonance up so that these peaks are actually pushing up a lot of frequencies, and then bring the drive up to about 40. Now let's move on to the effects. So we're going to start up here with hyper. I set the unison of the hyper to 3 to match whatever the unison I'm using. Generally, that works. Sometimes you can just bring it all the way up, but just to ear, however that sounds best to you. If you have this all the way up, I'm going to turn this all the way down for now. You can hear it kind of makes it really wide versus just off. Yeah, but if you turn it on, it basically gives it a little bit of width, and that's why I like to do it with the volume so that it kind of feels like it's opening up as it's talking. We'll also use the dimension to give it some extra width. I don't like to put an LFO on this because it kind of gives it a weird sound, especially if you bring this up. It feels like it's moving a little bit too much. So I leave the movement off of that and keep this spreading of the sound constant and really small. You don't need a lot to make it sound very different with this. So we'll bring that up to 43. Next, we're going to use downsample, and downsample is really important if you want 8-bit sounds, and that's totally what this is going for. It's like an 8-bit YOI that got super distorted afterwards. So start with a downsampler and bring the drive, there you go, to about 48. If you bring, and let's say this is 43, if you bring both these all the way up, it totally crushes the sound. So if you leave this at about 48, it still leaves some of the characteristics of the sound that was originally there, and then bring this down so it gives even more room, but you can still hear that like 8-bit arcade grit going through. Next, we move on to delay, and this kind of setup was inspired by a tip Moonboy showed on his YouTube, basically where you keep the mix all the way up on a delay and then mess with the feedback at really low delays. I think he normally had it on normal, but for this sound, the tap delay sounded a little bit better. Just happened to be that way. And also just to my ear, I put 89 for this. So here's what it sounds like with the delay and without. Kind of gives it that little like screech almost. And there's what it sounds like with the feedback all the way up. So you can see what sound is being brought in. And also, let's link these and bring it up so you can kind of see the difference if the decay is different. Sorry, delay. So changing that also will give you a totally different sound. But I think I liked it at 261. Yeah, right about there. And that just gave it a little high end for my taste. But if you want to make it totally your own, I think this is a great spot to do it because you can get so many different sounds just by changing that one thing. Next, we're going to look at the equalizer. This is just going to amp up one specific frequency range because that's the area I thought sounded the best. And you could hear it's that same frequency range that this put in. And yeah, that just gives it a little bit more screechiness if that's what you're going for. And use this to taste as well. Use the frequency and whichever LFO movement you like the best. I use this to just kind of move it around that range that I thought sounded best. The compressor, the multiband compressor is extremely important for pretty much any dubstep bass sound of any kind, just because it really gives it that clarity that you need, and just amps up all of the frequency ranges. But for this one specifically, I wanted it to totally clip and distort the sound. So as you can tell, before the compressor, it's already clipping, but with this compressor, and I will just turn this all the way up, it's probably normally straight up like that, and that totally just crushes it. But the threshold being down crushes it even more. The more you put the threshold to the left, the more it affects the sound that you have. And the gain usually is down to 0, but I brought it up to 5.4 just because that's the level I liked it at. The other thing that I thought was really important for this sound is that it's really dirty sounding in between these levels that we had set here. So if you hear right when it hits about here, it still sounds pretty like gritty. And I didn't really like that. I wanted kind of a clean uh, one hit, one hit, one hit. So I brought the level all the way down and used that as a modifier for the mix. And you can see it drops off the, basically mix level of the compressor, which is really important. Next thing we added was some reverb, and that's just to give it some space and make it sound like it's in a, particular room or wherever. Normally I go with a hall just because it sounds really big. That's something for, like big, like stabbing chords and things like that. But for this one, I wanted like a really small, like almost like you couldn't tell reverb. So I used a plate. I brought the size down to about 19, brought the delay down to 3 milliseconds, and I cut the low end of the reverb out as well. I thought that was pretty important. Generally, you don't want your low end muddy. That's just how it works as a whole. And high cut at 66. That was 44. I think the damp was the same. I don't think I changed that. But then I brought the width up. So basically, bringing the size down meant that it wouldn't be this giant, lasting reverb. But then the width would also give it that kind of background depth to expand. So here's what it sounds like without the reverb. And here's the reverb. It's almost like there's no change, but we're going to add a little bit more reverb later, so don't worry about that. Here's what it sounds like with like 100%. At 50%, you get a mix of like perfectly both the reverb and the main sound. But yeah, I didn't want quite that much, so I think I put it at about there. And last thing we did was add in another filter, and these are all just like the filter section here, but you don't get the visual display of it. So for this, we put in a comb, and I'll show you what a comb looks like real quick. Comb positive. It has a lot of these resonant peaks. I'm gonna put it back to HP, and that is just so that you can have a lot of changes to the frequencies of the sound. So for this, we didn't do a lot LFO wise. Put this at 190 hertz, moved it about 7, but the resonance is where it comes in. It makes those peaks like exponential, and then brought the drive up. And this, I don't know why I put this here. It's not necessary. And the mix, I put probably on this macro, but I ended up not liking the macro, so don't worry about that. Mixes at 21. Here's without and with. It almost isn't that noticeable, just kind of beeps it up a little bit. Anyways, last thing, super important, post-processing. Always post-process I want to say almost all, but pretty much any of my sounds that I make in Serum, I post-process them, even if it's just like EQ. But most of the time I add some saturation too. There's a lot in here, so I'll do it all one at a time. And just so you guys know, the preset itself and the effect rack are going to be in the description below. So make sure to check that out if you don't want to just follow along in the video. Started off with an EQ, strangely enough, to get rid of that sound that we used in the delay. I thought that was really important to use to compress, and then it kind of added frequencies elsewhere. But right here is it without it. Actually, that's everything. Let's turn all these off. So I can take it out. And you can hear if you use this little headphone right here. Yeah, I just didn't like that little sound, and I didn't want to amplify it more with all these other saturations and stuff. Here's the other reverb I was talking about. It's super low, 4.8%, really low cut here as well, high quality and really small size, and short decay time. Usually it's probably about 1.2. But yeah. And I up the reflect and up the diffuse, and here's what it sounds like. Just gives it a little more room. Next, we've got this overdrive. So this overdrive is a preset in here in Ableton, right here, the mids overdrive. But as you can see, it just comes with 100% drive. I brought that down because if you put it at 100%, just a little bit too much, and 37% was what I like the best. Next, a bit warmer. This is another preset in Ableton for saturator. Right here, same thing, sort of as the overdrive. It comes in at 61.9% on its own. I brought it down to 23. So if you have it up at, that's just heinous. But I brought it back to 23. And I think I had to turn the soft clip on, which is important because it attempts to make sure you don't clip. But I mean, you do anyway. The way I stop that, I'll do later with the glue compressor, but before that, I put on EQ8 so I could take out the low end. I wanted to be able to put in my own sub and just clean up that. And lastly is the glue compressor because we distorted the heck out of this. I mean, it is clipping up a storm, but I did it on purpose because I knew I wanted to rein it in with the glue compressor. Glue compressor comes like this. All I did was turn on the soft clip and add a makeup of 6, and then I left it just like that. And that's because the soft clip makes sure if I leave this like that, we're still clipping. If you turn the soft clip on, boom, no more clipping. You don't want to send your tracks clipping into the master, so I turn the soft clip on if I want to make a distorted sound. And then the makeup just kind of distorts it a little bit more without clipping it, so, or without, clipping over, I guess, here. So this is also just a flavor to give it more of that like crunch. And that's why I liked 6, but you can do it to taste however you like. And that's pretty much it. The last thing I added was a return track, which is a trick I learned from Carbon actually. And he had this part of this template. I changed it quite a bit, but this return track he showed me, and basically you take a delay and a little bit of EQ here and a compressor, and that makes things on the sides really sizzle. So without that, it sounds good, but it sounds really centered. And so when I add this, it just gets that like sides kind of filled out a little bit more. So you just make it a really short decay. You guys can screenshot this if you want. A really short decay, and you want it to not have any of the low end frequencies because it's kind of like that ear candy. You want it to just like sizzle, and then compress the heck out of it too. But yeah, that's pretty much it. As I said before, the preset and the effect rack are going to be in the description below, so check that out. And anyways, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.